Nathalie Dupree Cooks is made possible in part by Publix supermarkets. Publix is pleased to support this and other quality public broadcasting programs.
A well-stocked pantry makes preparing wonderful meals a breeze. Nathalie's pear and prosciutto salad will be a flavorful starter for your meal. Chicken cacciatore is a delicious main course, complemented by hot carrots with pine nuts. Sam's marbled biscotti are a crunchy addition to a menu of luscious Italian flavors. And the bonus is that it's all easy to prepare.
Hello, I'm Nathalie Dupree, and almost everything I'm showing you today can come off of the pantry shelf, so you shouldn't have to rush out and buy anything. But of course, you're going to have thought ahead, done some grocery shopping, and have some things in the refrigerator and the freezer, perhaps. First thing I want to show you is a pear and prosciutto salad. Now, when I go up to the cabin, many times I just take fresh lettuce. It's one of the few fresh things that I take, and everything else is something that if I take it up, I can take it back home if I need to, or else that I can just leave up in the cabin in case I don't use it. So stack your lettuce. I took out the core there, and then just roll them all together and slice into 1/2 inch dice. Now, I wash my lettuce ahead of time, dry it, wrap it in paper towels, and put it in a plastic bag. Or else, another thing that I do is just wash it and dry it, and then one of those spinner things is terrific. And that's a little hard right there. And put it in one of the new plastic vegetable bags that also they have holes in them they seem to store. Now you divide your lettuce among all the whatever plates that you need, and peel and core and cut a pear into 6 or 8s. And this is a Basque pear, which is one of my favorites. Cut it in half and core it, and a little melon baller just does a terrific job there. And you can peel it before or after, or leave the peel on if it's just the family and you like the peel, which I tend to. You can use a potato peeler or an apple peeler, whatever you want to call that. Cut it into wedges. And pear doesn't seem to need to be sprinkled with an acid like lemon or lime to the same degree that apple does, but you can do that if you want to. Now I have some prosciutto here. Prosciutto is the most fabulous dry-aged Italian ham. It's Parma ham, and it's one of the things that I like to keep on hand in my refrigerator. But I'm not always feeling posh, and prosciutto does last a long time. You can buy it if you want to in a cryovac sealed kind of a package, or you can buy the whole ham if you're really feeling lush and posh, and buy it during the holidays and just use it almost all year round. But if I don't feel that way, I can use Smithfield ham or a good country ham. But they seem to be saltier, and so I usually soak them briefly to remove some of the salt. But just cut it into julienne strips. And then, of course, if you want to, you can just always use plain old store-bought ham, the kind you would get at a country store or the kind that you get in your local grocery store. Sprinkle it over your pears. Now whisk together Dijon mustard, some red wine vinegar, olive oil, and salt and pepper. Usually they're in a ratio of 3 to 1. And just drizzle this over your salad. Might be easier to drizzle it from a container like this. And season that to taste. If it's too oily, add a little salt or a little sugar. Excuse me, I got a little itch in my nose there. Now I have some chicken cacciatore. The first thing that I want to do is to brown this chicken, and I've got to cut it first. It's got a little hot spot there. I had it heating up while I was waiting for you, or while you were waiting for me. Here we go. I'm going to cut off the leg first, snap it, and cut off the back right here. And if you want to, you can cut it again right in the leg. And when you want to cut up a chicken, look for that fat. That tells you where the joint is. You can even snap it if you want to. Huh. It would. And that'll tell you right where to cut. There it goes. Now, always put your dark pieces in first, in the hottest place in your pan. Normally that's the center, but right now you can see where that hot spot is, that is true. Oop, forgot to remove the insides. Now, I know, then when you would buy the chicken, the first thing that you would do would be to take the innards out. And what there is here is a neck, some liver, and some gizzards. The heart should be in there somewhere too. You can save that for another time, but you shouldn't, if you tend to freeze your chicken, and I do, particularly if I'm going to the country, I'll freeze it. And then by the time I get where I'm going, it's almost at a nice point. Keeping it in the cooler, it's almost defrosted enough to use, and then the next day it's perfect. Let it go overnight in the refrigerator. Here's the other half. Snap it, cut off. Now, the little problem right now is that I'm leaving, I'm going to just put this one in quickly. Here you've seen me cut one, just to get it brown. I'm leaving this lovely backbone piece, and I will use that at the tail end. Now, cut along. Of course, you can use a cut-up chicken for this recipe, but if you do, your timing is adjusted because a cut-up chicken from the grocery store, now I just followed the same thing. I followed that little fat line, and that told me where to cut it. And then cook it with the skin side down. You always put the skin side down because that's the, whenever you're browning something, the first side that you brown is generally the prettiest side because it hits the fat or it hits the heat in such a way that the moisture is sealed in, and then the moisture is pushed through to the second side. So if you want it to be pretty, you put your first side, the first side that you put down is going to be the side that you're going to have to show. Here's this, and you can just snap your wings and cut your wings right off at the joint there, or if you'd like to, you can get everybody give a little piece of the breast and cut it there. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut, oop, right at the wing. And having a hard time seeing where I want to go today. There's this. And here's the other side. And then, really, you should cut this breast in half. I want to show you the whole recipe, so I'm going to put it whole, but you can just take your scissors and cut right up the center there. A good kitchen scissors is an invaluable tool, and I think these are the best, really. They're fabulous ones right here. Now, while this chicken is browning, you have your onion sliced, and you've got some garlic chopped, and you've got them in there and cooking. Once the chicken is browned, you would add your onions and your garlic to that pan, but this has already been done. And just take your chicken out. I've got it over there. Remove it from the pan, and then you've got it all ready. And then add some chopped canned tomatoes with their juices and sugar. And you know, there are all sorts of wonderful varieties of tomatoes. I say canned, but there's a variety of tomatoes that I like these days that comes in a box. Put the chicken on top, sprinkle it with chopped basil, cover it, and simmer it 20 minutes. And as soon as you get that on, start the water for your pasta, or actually you could a little bit sooner than that. Here is the chicken already done there. I'm not going to have time to dish it out. It doesn't matter. I already happen to have one ready for you. And let me just tell you about the pasta in case I do have time. You want to always try to cook twice as much pasta as you need. I mean, you wouldn't want to invite Giuliano and Marcella Hazan to the house for this dish, but why not? Because otherwise your timing kind of runs off. So anyway, go ahead and boil your water in, throw your pasta in, and cook it. Now, when the chicken is simmered 20 minutes, you just stir it gently and continue cooking it uncovered for 15 minutes to allow the liquid to evaporate. So that gives you that 20 minutes that you need to get your water to the boil. You add your pasta, and that cooks 10 to 12 minutes, so you're right on top. Then you toss your drained and cooked pasta. And I many times will keep this in a plastic bag in the refrigerator, ready for it. Top it with your Parmesan. Now, what did I do with that Parmesan? I bet that Parmesan fell in there. How about that? Well, toss it with the Parmesan. I'm going to talk to you about Parmesan anyway. and then top it with your chicken and sauce. You're going to love it.
Nathalie will return after a word from her guest.
Does your freezer look like this rather than like this? Freezers contain an expensive cache of food, and it must be stored properly. Unless a freezer is packed so that there's circulation and air and the food is wrapped really securely, you're going to waste an awful lot of money. Food that is not stored properly will become tough and dry. And the first part of storing food in the freezer doesn't begin here in the kitchen, but rather at the supermarket. Frozen vegetables and fruits that look like this or sound like this are things that you should not buy. Food that has been frozen so that it's a solid block of ice shows that possibly the freezer at the supermarket has thawed and then been frozen again. Or fruit that is lumpy shows that the product may have been frozen again from a thawed condition, and rather than being kept perfect every time. Food that is packed in freezer containers at the supermarket is perfectly secure as long as it's not damaged. The greatest thing to be concerned about is meat and poultry, because that is bought at the refrigerator case and it's an expensive buy. Product that is wrapped in filmy packaging like this is something that really isn't going directly into the freezer without some bad results. If you look at this particular chicken, it was stored just in a single layer of wrap that was really could easily be penetrated by the freezer, and the result is a chicken that is dry and brown and certainly will be tough when it's cooked. A better way to do it is to take what I do, a pound of hamburger, and divide it into 3 or 4 individual portions, wrap them in heavy-duty wrap that is clear and you can see through it, and then put it into plastic bag, really tough and firm, that will go into the freezer. And the most important thing is to eliminate all the air. Just make sure that it's sealed correctly. And a great concern of mine is to make sure that it's dated properly too, so that it won't stay in the freezer for too long. A chicken like this can be wrapped in heavy plastic, wrapped in foil, and I always think that when you're thinking about packing for the freezer, you should think about going outdoors in cold weather. 2 and 3 layers are really important to protect food that is going to live in the freezer for 3 or 4 months. Make sure too that you use freezer tape if that's going to keep the air out. Just because you think that food is frozen, it won't last forever, and particularly fatty foods deteriorate in 3 or 4 months. Butter is a concern, pork is a concern, anything that has got fat in it. I've got 3 gadgets here that I think are really important if you're a person that loves to use a freezer and to plan meals ahead. Some companies are offering a guide that will tell you just exactly how food will last in the freezer. Another thing to have in your freezer at all times is a thermometer, and this shows you that the freezer should really be at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Otherwise, you're going to find that you're losing your food to ice crystals and to thawing out. And the latest thing that I'm very enthusiastic about is some baking soda packed specially for the freezer, and that really keeps the freezer sweet and clean. A couple of tricks that you may not think of when you're using your freezer. You can use it to quick chill gelatin molds, and you always use a timer. And you can also use it to freeze your own special produce that you pick up at the supermarket or in your garden. Put it on a tray and freeze it, and then put it in one of the plastic bags that I showed you. And if you're using vegetables, make sure that the vegetables are quickly cooked for 30 seconds before you freeze them on a tray like that, and then you put them in a bag with its date on.
A few minutes ago, I showed you some pears, and the other 2 pears that I was going to show you were Danju, which would be nice with it, and also a Packham. Though both of those would be very nice, and really any pear would do. The nice thing about pears is that they do keep a long while, and you might as well keep them refrigerated. There's no virtue to keeping, they're never going to ripen, so there's no need for you to keep them out in any way. want to show you these hot carrots with pine nuts. So this is becoming a pretty Italian meal for you. First thing you want to do is to peel and slice some carrots. And carrots are another thing that keep a long time. I always keep some carrots in the house because they're pretty non-destructible. And even when they're pitiful looking, you can usually make them work. But you could also use canned carrots with this if you want to freshen them up, if you were in a tight. Now go ahead and slice your carrots. And I have some oil heating up here. And go ahead and add some carrots and some chopped garlic, some drained capers, and some pine nuts. And these are probably not the kind of pine nuts that grow on your tree. These are Italian pine nuts or pignoli, and some crushed anchovy fillets. And just toss all that over medium heat and cook them until the pine nuts begin to brown slightly, which is about 5 minutes. So you want a nice sized pan for that. Then, meanwhile, whisk together some red wine vinegar, some Dijon mustard. Where did my Dijon mustard go? We'll pretend, oh, here it is, right in the bowl. Some chopped oregano or other fresh herb that you've been growing in your garden outside. I hope you're growing fresh herbs. And some chicken stock and some Tabasco. In fact, or any hot pepper sauce that you've got. Kind of fun to buy other hot pepper sauces on the side of the road, isn't it? All these stands, they seem to have somebody that's come up with their own concoction. Do that, and then you pour this over, over your hot carrots, like that. Dish them up and serve them warm or in room temperature. Mine are already done here. This is a beautiful Florodora pattern. Florodora green, it's called, and it always seems to me that I should be wearing something teal green when I use this china, and I believe in using pretty china wherever you are, whether you're in a vacation home or whether you're at the beach, the mountains, or even in your own home, certainly. Now, you're going to garnish that with grated Parmesan cheese, and I want to talk to you about Parmesan. There's the green can. You all know the green can. That is not Parmigiano Reggiano, unless I'm severely mistaken. This is a domestic cheese. There are also some from some South American companies. They come in tiny little squares in the grocery store. They produce a product like this, which is pretty rubbery. In order to get something to taste really good, you have to use much more of the green can or of this, if in fact you ever can get it to taste good, than you can this expensive but highly flavorful Parmigiano Reggiano. Now, I buy Parmigiano Reggiano in large blocks. This would last me a great big long while, but you have to understand I do a television show and I test recipes, so I might use more than the ordinary person. But here is some Parmigiano Reggiano. I wanted to show you this big block because you can see the name of it right on, stamped on the outside rind. And that's going to tell you that you're buying a quality cheese. Even if you buy the smallest little wedge or piece, you're going to see a stamp on it. It will also tell you when it was produced. This was 1991. So you can really tell a lot about the cheese that you get just by looking at the rind. Now this is the fresh Parmesan, and I happen to like a little Mueller grater to grate my cheese with, and that would be the same for the pasta. But of course you can use a little grater just like this, and that works sometimes, usually, equally as well. It's just not today because I grabbed a sliver. Now, in Parma, where you would also have that Parma hand, sometimes they'll just take slivers like this and put them on your salad. So if you wanted to have this instead and put this on top of your prosciutto and your pear salad, that would be gilding the lily, but it certainly would be wonderful. I want to show you now how to make biscotti, which means twice cooked. It makes, about 15 cookies. Now, this will just finish us up as Italians, I think, today, because everything turns out to have been that way. Sift together 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Now, you can buy biscotti. They keep very nicely in a tight container, and then if they do get soggy on you, you can just re-crisp them in the oven for about 15 minutes on a low heat, so it works together. Sift together 2 cups of all-purpose flour, a cup of sugar, and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And I do use a lot of soft wheat flour or cake flour. But when I say all-purpose flour, I usually mean a national brand all-purpose flour if I'm not doing a southern recipe. So, but you don't always have all kinds in your house. So today this is a southern flour and it's going to produce a wetter dough. And I'm going to need to use more flour just to compensate for it. It's something you might have to be aware of as you change places, or because I'm mixing together 2 eggs, 2 egg whites, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. If you keep flour in your cabin or at the beach, it's going to have a different moisture content. So don't lock yourself rigidly in this kind of a recipe into just exactly how much flour you want that you have, or in exactly what kind of flour, because you're going to make yourself miserable. You seem to never have the right kind of flour for the particular recipe wherever you go, and you have to learn to adjust. Now you stir the egg mixture into the dry ingredients, and you just keep stirring it till it's smooth, and then you divide it in half. Now I'm going to combine 2 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder with a teaspoon of instant coffee granules. And hopefully everything's boiling here. I doubt it. I'm going to bring everything over now because so I don't forget where it is. I like that little ledge. Now I've got all this stirred together, and I've mixed a tablespoon of instant coffee granules. Someone just told me that I said the wrong thing, with 4 teaspoons of boiling water. And when you divide your dough in half, here we go. And see, I may need to add a little bit more to this. I'm just going to roughly show you this because I've got it in all sorts of different stages and I want to show you the whole process. Always stay neat now. You add this to your other half of the dough, and that water wasn't quite boiling, it was sitting here. So then I'm going to add to the other dough, to the first dough, here, I'm going to add a cup of whole toasted almonds. I like these cups because they stack so nicely. Let's see if I can get this here. And 1 teaspoon of almond extract. I'm just going to knead these in here. And then I'm going to refrigerate them for 30 minutes until they're firm. And this is where I'm going to need more flour, as you can see. And I don't want to spend a lot of time pushing this in because I'm running out of time. I'm just going to miraculously show you this and put this in here. Don't you wish you lived my life where you didn't have to fool with that just this second? Now, you form the chocolate dough into a log about 12 inches long. You pat this dough out to your rectangle, and then you put about 12-inch rectangle, and you put your chocolate part on top, which is right here. Then, so all of this is on a greased cookie sheet, and you fold this over here, and this has been sitting here too, so it's gotten wetter. And of course, this doesn't have to be perfect. But if you want to flour your hands, it'll make it much easier to work with. Since you're going to cut these and shape them, don't cry if you can't get it absolutely wrapped over here perfectly. And run it into the oven, bake it at 325 degrees until it's firm, which is about 20 to 25 minutes. Let me get rid of that so that I can tell you the rest. Now, it comes out like this. Put it on a cooling rack for about 5 minutes and reduce the temperature in the oven to 300 degrees. Now, pull the dough out, and this is where the twice bake comes, and cut it into 1/2 inch thick slices, just like this. And then you stand these little guys up on their sides like this, and bake them the second time at 300 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. Now, lots of times I have gone some time between the two in case I couldn't bake them all at one time. Then, meanwhile, you melt your cup of chocolate chips in a small saucepan over low heat, or in the microwave, and you paint your done biscotti, some more over here, just like this. Ooh. Put them on wax paper until the chocolate hardens and store them in airtight containers. This is a fabulous meal. You can make it all ahead. You can cart it. It's wonderful.
A well-stocked pantry makes preparing wonderful meals a breeze. Nathalie's pear and prosciutto salad will be a flavorful starter for your meal. Chicken cacciatore is a delicious main course, complemented by hot carrots with pine nuts. Sam's marbled biscotti are a crunchy addition to a menu of luscious Italian flavors. And the bonus is that it's all easy to prepare.
All the recipes in this program and in the entire series are available in Nathalie Dupree Cooks Everyday Meals from a Well-Stocked Pantry, published by Clarkson Potter. This book contains a collection of over 150 recipes, complete with do-ahead and storage tips. Order your copy by calling the number on your screen. The price is $20 plus shipping and handling. Please have your credit card ready when you call 1-800-235-3000 for Nathalie Dupree Cooks Everyday Meals from a Well-Stocked Pantry.
Lots of times people tell me that for their quick meals, they eat pasta. But really, for a quick meal, pasta is the thing that takes the most time. It's the boiling of the water, which can take 20 minutes to half an hour. That's very irritating to wait for. I often cook pasta a pound at a time, saving half of it for a second meal. I mean, I wouldn't invite Marcella Hazan or Giuliano Bugiali to dinner when I did this, but I certainly do it ahead of time. I refrigerate it in an airtight container or a plastic bag. I reheat it in the microwave or by dipping it into boiling water and then draining it immediately. Sometimes I just take it and toss it with hot butter or oil, and that reheats it as well. It's not absolutely perfectly al dente, but if you undercook it slightly, you can come up with a pretty darn good product for a truly quick meal.
Nathalie Dupree Cooks is made possible in part by Public Supermarkets. Publix is pleased to support this and other quality public broadcasting programs.